Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. Throughout 2025, relations between Turkey and Saudi Arabia steadily warmed, even as the Middle East slid deeper into uncertainty. From the fragile ceasefire in Gaza to Israel's attacks across the region, Ankara and Riyadh increasingly found themselves on the same page. That alignment became even more visible after Israel's recent recognition of Somalia's breakaway region of Somaliland. Last week, Turkish President Erdogan held a phone call with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, focusing on developments in Somalia and Yemen. Erdogan underscored the importance of preserving the territorial integrity and stability of both countries. The message comes as Yemen faces renewed volatility, especially in its southern region. Syria is another growing point of overlap. Ankara and Riyadh have both expressed support for Syria's territorial unity and the political process, even as Israel carries out regular airstrikes across the country. So how far can cooperation between Turkey and Saudi Arabia go? And which flashpoints will ultimately test this emerging alignment? For more, joining me now from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, is political and media analyst Khalid Al-Maena. From Istanbul, Hedin Sarı Ertem, Associate Professor at Istanbul Medeniyet University, and from Doha, Qatar, Ali Bakir, Assistant Professor at Qatar University. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Khalid, I want to begin with you. I mean, it looks like Saudi Arabia and Turkey are getting closer, and it looks like there's a lot of political events that are driving this convergence. I mean, I want to get your point of view. What is the locomotive behind these two countries having more in common right now?
I think they always had many things in common, but right now, as you know, the external challenges that are coming from outside Europe and America. Also, there are internal challenges within the Arab world, the Gaza massacre, the crisis, Sudan, the Yemen and all. And it's very important that Saudi Arabia, Turkey and others have one platform to deal with. The Saudis, among the salient features of the foreign policy over the years, was non-interference in other countries. But whether we like it or not, because we live in this neighborhood, there are times when we have to come up and try to say enough is enough, or try to get the warring parties, whoever they may be, together so that the after effects of this and the reaction will not go and filter into other places and create more chaos.
Mm-hmm. And it seems the Turks are also keen on establishing a warmer relationship with Saudi Arabia as well. I mean, what do you think are the major issues that are bringing these countries closer together?
Well, I think the two countries have already understood that there are many more things that they can benefit from instead of becoming major rivals in the region or conflicting with each other. So the previous years especially tested these two main actors of the region, and they already understood that there are many common threats that they have to fight against rather than focusing on the issues that they should be rivals against each other. For that reason, I think the most important subjects they can benefit from or cooperate at can be as the energy sector, for example, or the investment sector, as well as the defense sector, I guess. And of course, they are already aware that they should be working on the stability and peace of the region, especially facing the challenges like Syria, like Palestine, especially Gaza, the future of Gaza. So there are many things that they have to focus and work together rather than focusing on their rivalry areas.
Mm-hmm. Ali, when we look at the Turkish president's readout from his phone call with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, we see specifically Somalia and Yemen mentioned in the Turkish readout. What do you see these two countries cooperating on specifically vis-a-vis Yemen or Somalia, where they can bring about a force multiplier effect together to be able to forward their interests?
Well, thank you very much for hosting me, dear Yusuf. Let me begin by saying that the Saudi-Turkish bilateral relations are at their best currently, since the establishing of relations between the two countries on political, economic, defense, security, and even defense industry levels. There is a high understanding between the high-level officials of the two countries that achieving security and stability in the region is not only in their own interest, but also for the interest of the region. That's why we have seen the two countries cooperating closely on hot issues in the region, from Palestine, Gaza, to Syria, to Somalia, to also Yemen and Libya and elsewhere. So I think that the current challenges force the two countries to come closer to each other, and that's why we had the second round of High Coordination Council between the two countries held last year to highlight and outline the cooperation areas of the two countries. I think that mentioning Yemen and Somalia both have great interest in stabilizing and securitizing the two countries, preserving the unity and territorial integrity of the two countries. Turkey invested a lot in Somalia in terms of rehabilitating the human resources, the infrastructure, the security personnel to fight radicalism and terrorism and try to bring Somalia back to the international community. The Saudis did the same in Yemen, and now they are facing challenges that threaten the national security and interest of both countries. That's why I think we are going to witness closer cooperation and coordination between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, not only on these two countries, but also on other files like Syria and Libya and Sudan in particular.
Khalid, at the beginning of the decade, let's say around 2021, 2022, I mean, there was this normalization process where we saw bilateral visits back and forth between Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Can we now say that normalization is over and it's now in the next step, like partnership, alliance? And if it is towards the next step, is this alliance just bilateral, or is this the beginning of something bigger, something more multilateral, something more leading in the Muslim world, or at least in the region?
Well, I think the Saudis have always focused on multilateralism. They start with the bilateral, but I think it's very important because Saudi Arabia has to get everyone on board. We are facing a common challenge, the Somaliland issues. A few minutes ago, I just heard also this Majlis al-Intiqal, the one in Yemen that has been creating chaos, have decided to lay down their weapons, and they would like to talk and try to resolve the issue. So Saudi Arabia, because of its vast geography, its economic power, because of its place in the Muslim world, would really like to see a better neighborhood, and rather than be prey to all these external forces and external dramas or externally created dramas. So I think, yes, there will be more face-to-face, government-to-government cooperation. There will be more things put on the table in a frank manner, because it's important that we try our best to see to it that these things don't spring out every now and then. Somaliland, Yemen, and of course Syria is now becoming calmer, but still we have a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. Helen, at the Doha summit, after the attack on Doha, the Egyptian foreign minister wanted to see some type of security arrangement that would bring together Muslim countries. Turkey was part of his proposal, obviously Saudi Arabia part of the proposal. I want to kind of ask you a different aspect of what I just asked Khalid. Do you think that this alliance could be the bedrock or the foundation of some expanded security arrangement for the region?
Let me especially underline that for sure there is a kind of need for that, a regional security alignment, a kind of, let's say, Middle East NATO. But at the same time, we all know that this is not a very easy scenario, as many countries of the region, especially the leading countries like Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, from time to time, they might have different national interests, conflicting interests in the region. For that reason, first of all, I guess ideally it's important to admit that there is a certain requirement for that for all the regional actors, but at the same time, After that, they have to work very hard on developing new initiatives, let's say cooperation areas, strengthen their common understanding regarding what the real problem of the Middle East is. As our previous guest already underlined, there are continuing attacks from outside the region, maybe not physically, but ideologically, let's say. So the threats, the challenges are mainly coming from outside the region, but there are also continuing challenges like Israel, like Israeli aggression in the region, especially in the Palestinian territories. So there are lots of things to work on, but at least at first step, it is important that the countries led by Egypt, included by Turkey and Saudi Arabia, already admitted that there is a certain need for such a common security agenda and, of course, alliance.
Ali, I want to ask you about Iran. It's a country that Turkey and Saudi Arabia very closely follow in the region. Obviously, protests right now that could yield to many different scenarios. What are the challenges right now out of the possible scenarios that could come out of those protests for Saudi Arabia and Turkey?
Well, it's when it comes to Iran, it's very hard to speculate what's going to happen. But let me say that as long as Netanyahu is in power in Israel, and also the nuclear issue, the Iranian nuclear issue is not resolved, there is always a possibility that a war can erupt anytime, whether directly between Israel and Iran or indirectly, inciting people inside Iran to overthrow the government. This is, of course, a possibility, and if it happens, we might not know how the reaction, I mean, the consequences could be. But what we really know right now is that Israel is trying to encircle the active regional powers like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, and of course Iran, with a kind of strategy that provokes, fragmented countries, that backs separate groups and incites chaos in the region. We have seen Israeli activities encircling Egypt in Gaza and in Sudan. Also, Israeli activities against Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean with Greece and Cyprus, and also in the Horn of Africa and in Sudan. And we have seen now, although the UAE is directly in the picture, but there are those who think that it is the Israeli plan to make chaos near Saudi Arabia and try to encircle Saudi Arabia, especially after Riyadh, refusing to normalize the relation with Israel without the Israelis meeting the previous conditions, and one of them is the realization of the two-state solution and the Palestinian state. So there is a grand strategy for Israel to incite chaos everywhere in the region, and the regional powers are aware, I think, at this moment of this strategy, and that's why they are trying to react decisively and also collectively, working and coordinating with each other. And we have seen now the Saudi coordination with Turkey, and also Turkey and Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Turkey, all, I think, for the sake of the same issue, to maintain stability, de-escalate the situation, and try to foil any attempt to spread chaos in the region.
Khalid, I'm looking at what's been going on between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. I mean, the first time seeing such a visible divergence in interest between two GCC countries that have historically been very close to each other. Obviously, this is something that Turkey is looking at too, because it wants to have good relations with both countries. I mean, how serious is this divergence? I mean, we saw an ultimatum, and then we saw a pretty quick backtrack from Abu Dhabi, coming back into the fold, it seems, of what Saudi Arabia expects. Is this divergence done, or is there still some type of friction between Abu Dhabi and Riyadh?
I mean, call it what you may, but I think there have been differences of opinion on Yemen. The Saudis were very clear of what they wanted, to see to it that peace will be there will be no separation. Remember one thing, it's not just about Yemen. The Israelis and certain powers want the balkanization of the Arab world, of the region. Saudi Arabia thank God, is secure and stable and does command a lot of respect in the Muslim world, in the Arab world. And I think it's in the vanguard of stopping this balkanization. And the balkanization starts with creating rifts between the countries. So you have to show sobriety, stability, and statesmanship. And the Saudis were very cautious. They were very smart enough to see to it that it will not go out of hand. And because you look at the larger good of the region. So I think this will simmer down, especially when the Yemenis themselves will notice that it will be better for them to come to Saudi Arabia, South Yemen, being close to the border and having historical, economic, and social relations more with Saudi Arabia than with any other country in the region. So I think saner elements will see that sense will prevail.
Mm-hmm. Helen, I want to ask you about Syria. I mean, after President al-Shara came to power, I mean, some of his first visits were Ankara and Riyadh, welcomed in both capitals by both leaders. What type of role do you see for both of these countries inside Syria? I mean, could that cooperation extend to Syria, its rebuilding, its restructuring, its reorganization, and just providing more legitimacy, more diplomatic openings for al-Shara?
Exactly. I mean, since the beginning of the new regime in Syria, two countries, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, are working together to stabilize the region, which is in their interest, which is in the interest of all the actors in the Arab world, especially. For that reason, what I see for the future of Syria is, okay, it will be a difficult path, but at the same time, there are many things that Turkey and Saudi Arabia can contribute, especially regarding the infrastructure. Saudi Arabia will be, of course, a very important actor in Syria, in the future of Syria. And regarding the security and stability of the region, I guess Turkey will be playing a very important role. As many guests already underlined, the two of our guests, Israel is the biggest challenge, unfortunately, for the region of Syria as well. So the two countries, Saudis and Turkey, should be very careful about their plannings for the future, as there are many traps, let's say, which are trying to somehow increase the disagreements or rivalries among the regional countries, the partners like Turkey and Saudi Arabia. So they have to be very calm and they have to focus on the long run for the stability and peace of the region. I also would like to underline that, especially in the academic literature, we see Turkey and Saudi Arabia as the two very important emerging middle powers in the region. And naturally, we call these middle powers as the stabilizers of the global system as well. So starting from the region, the Middle East, Syria, especially in the micro level, the two countries have a lot to do for the future of the region, the stability and peace of the region.
Mm-hmm. Ali, it seems like Israel is the common denominator in most of these topics. I mean, each of our guests have mentioned Israel. And when I look at Israeli media and they're watching Turkey and Saudi Arabia get closer, I mean, they seem very, very concerned, very anxious, even warning of closer relations as it's something to be warned of. Obviously, they're viewing this as a threat. Is this getting closer of these two countries something against Israel, or is this to advance their own bilateral interests just between Riyadh and Ankara?
Let me put it this way. First, there is a hegemonic agenda for Israel, and it became very clear following the genocidal war on Gaza and also the swift Israeli-Iranian war last year. And the Israelis are pushing hard to expand their influence and to realize the expansive agenda. And the only way to achieve this is to make sure that chaos is all over the place, and the most effective and powerful regional countries are either paralyzed with their internal challenges or pretty much occupied trying to de-escalate the regional situation. And this is what the Israelis are actually right now doing against Egypt, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia in particular. Like I said, in Egypt's regional space, the Israelis are pretty much involved in Gaza and West Bank, in Sudan indirectly, and lately also in Somalia, supporting a separatist Somaliland. Vis-a-vis Turkey, the Israelis pretty much object any Turkish role in escalating the situation in Gaza or deploying Turkish troops there to make sure no escalation happens in the future. And in order to pressure Turkey, they are trying to form alliances in Eastern Mediterranean with Greece and Cyprus to make Ankara pretty much occupied with these alliances. And finally, they also supported Somaliland to undermine Turkish influence and interest in Somalia. The same thing is happening against Saudi Arabia, especially with Riyadh pushing towards two-state solution and trying to stabilize the situation, and also rejecting any kind of normalization if Israel is not going to make concessions and commitments concerning Palestinian state, among other issues. And that's why the Israelis get very angry and trying to pressure Saudi Arabia through geopolitical games, supporting separation in Yemen, supporting separation in Somalia in order to encircle Saudi Arabia and put more pressure on it, depending on smaller regional countries. I think that this plan will ultimately fail, but definitely should not underestimated. Regional actors should work closely to counter the Israeli strategy, because at the end of the day, it's not only Israel who's working. We know that Israel has the back of the US and some European countries, and without this back, the Israelis couldn't achieve as a strategy. So I think that we will witness an intensification of the rivalry between Israel and Turkey, Israel and Saudi Arabia. But for sure, the Saudis, the Turks, the Egyptians are working to stabilize the situation because it undermines their own interests. Especially that everyone is looking to achieve or realize their grand visions. In Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030; in Turkey, Vision 2050; in Egypt, trying to couple with their economic challenges. So the only regional actor benefiting from chaos is Israel, and this is what Israeli are doing right now and should be faced or countered decisively in this manner.
Khalid, Ali used the word encircling. You used the word balkanization. I mean, when I look at the map of Saudi Arabia, on one side you have the Strait of Hormuz, Iran there. On the other side, if an entity in southern Yemen was formed, obviously very strategic choke point in the maritime analysis of that area. Somaliland, another strategic choke point. Are there attempts to try to landlock Saudi Arabia by controlling these maritime areas? And is balkanization just limited to Yemen? Is the target actually Saudi Arabia? And one last question to you also. Would you want to see Turkey as part of a stabilization force in Gaza?
Well, I think when I said balkanization, it's the balkanization of the Arab world. You see what happened in Iraq. I mean, semblance of a state. Syria is coming up, thankfully, with the Arab support and Arab understanding. Saudi Arabia, these are, movement, pinpricks around us. But hopefully, as I told you, with a stable government and somebody who sees and can see through what is happening, we can stunt this. But it is a source of a problem for us because Somaliland, this Yemen, or hopefully the Yemen issue, thanks to sagacious movements done in the past few days, will evaporate and become history. But we cannot afford to let our guard down. I still believe that in also the balkanization, not of Yemen, of the Arab world. And I'll be very frank about it. I've been saying this for years. And now the Israelis are openly talking about it. Their media, their social media, their rabbis, their people, their friends, the Zionist friends in the United States. So I think we must, and I truly believe that Saudi Arabia has the moral platform and the moral high ground to stunt this. Regarding Gaza, I think that the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, should have a say in their own future. And I think it's important that both the West Bank and Gaza get together and come up with on a common platform and see to it and work for implementation of 242 and 338, the UN resolutions, which are gathering dust in the halls of the United Nations. And it's very important for them to do that. As far as Turkey is concerned, any country in the region that can help alleviate the suffering of the people of Palestine and the people of Gaza. Remember, it's not Gaza. I got a call yesterday, and this is a true story, from a man who wanted to commit suicide in the West Bank. Life has become totally unbearable for people there. And I think, hopefully, if the countries in the region can come up and to alleviate the sufferings, any country other than the aggressor and the friends of the aggressors would be welcome.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely think that this warming relationship between Turkey and Saudi Arabia will definitely be one of the major focal points of 2026 for the region. Khalid, Helen, Ali, thank you for joining me. Great conversation. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.